everybody. This is JoAnne Eisen with Reach the Unlimited, and we are here again this week with a new topic, new person, and where are we going to go? We don't know, but here we go. I would love to welcome you all, or welcome Michael Mayo to our show. So everybody welcome him. Michael, thank you for being with us today.
So lovely to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Can you tell people a little about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I am a medium. I've been in this world of spiritual development and spiritual awareness since I was 18, and I'm now 33. So a few minutes, and it's been quite the journey. It's taken me kind of all over the world, to the UK, Australia. Where else has I gone? I've literally been all over the place. Doing working and doing that sort of thing. So it's been a journey of unfoldment and discovery and yeah. And I also do astrology. That's the other thing that I do. This is like the worst bio I've ever given, but it's okay. And I think I don't really like talking about what I've done. I'm a little bit more shy in that way, but yeah, I spent a lot of time developing, mostly over in the UK, and working with some amazing teachers, Eileen Davies, Gordon Smith, and I've been lucky enough to experience all kinds of different, spiritual modalities and belief systems, and I've explored. I've explored the spirituality, and it's continuously a journey, and I continue to grow and learn myself. So,
and that's I love that you said that. Hi, Sharon. Thanks for being here. That's one of the things I think is really important, is that we are always growing. It's not like you come into spirituality and become spiritual and that's it.
Yeah.
We're always learning and growing.
Absolutely. And it's so funny that you're saying like become spiritual, because like one of the things I think we forget is that we already are this thing. We already are that spiritual being. We're already that. Well, the problem is remembering, right? Remembering that, and then also, dealing with ourselves. And I think that's what we have to remember. It's like the only thing that keeps us limited from our sort of spiritual awareness is our life experience, like the traumas and the challenges and the things that we've gone through. And I feel like that's really sort of how we approach that is really where your spirituality really shines and flourishes, right? That's your opportunity for growth. That's your opportunity for expanding, your spiritual awareness. It's not just I'm going to light some sage and I'm going to put some crystals around and I'm going to om a little bit. Like that doesn't make you, that's not really where the work is, right? That's the easy part. The part of, true spiritual development is what happens when it's hard.
Yes.
Right? So.
And, I had somebody I was talking to last week who said, what is inner work? What does that really mean? What are you doing when you do the inner work? What would you say to somebody who asked that question?
Absolutely. So, for me, I tend to be of the mindset that, your personal healing is one thing, and then your spiritual growth is a separate thing. And these things should go together. Side by side, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes one goes, in front of the other. There's plenty of really amazing mediums who are also, have a lot of issues that they need to work out, right? Yeah. And there's also, people who maybe really want to make a connection, but have done so much of their own interpersonal work. So they're not one and the same, but they complement one another. And when you do one, it should help in some way the other one, but oftentimes that can lack. So as far as inner work, what that actually means to me is facing yourself, facing the good sides of you and accepting your strengths, while also dealing with the hurts, the traumas, the pains that we've experienced in our lives, and addressing those, right? Because we all have our tendencies to behave in a certain way, and a lot of these behaviors become very unconscious. We're not aware of them, and I think that's what the term consciousness and being conscious really means, right? That's what we're doing. We're becoming aware of how we're reacting to the world and choosing how we want to react to the world, right? And I think that we have to go into that sort of darker space. I mean, I'm not one that's like, go live in the shadow and all that sort of thing. But like, I do feel that we have to take a serious look at ourselves and take a serious look at what we're presenting and how we're reacting. It's just being aware. It's bringing awareness to our actions, right?
Well, I think as you become aware, when you have that awareness on why I'm reacting in this certain way, or what triggered that, or, well, that was interesting that I responded that way, even if you don't really have a knowing to that,
Sure.
it helps you to be able to change your whatever direction you're going or whatever caused you to do that. And so it's interesting that you said that inner work and spirituality are separate, because I've never looked at it that way. I find that very intriguing, because I always found that they kind of would weave in and out of each other, depending, like if I would understand something like awareness. I've always been a big proponent of be the observer of your life. If you can do that, then you're becoming aware of why or how or when or what triggered things that you would do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I would offer is that it's complementary. So they complement each other. So when you're working in one, it can help the other one, right? But what happens sometimes is something called spiritual bypassing, where we make everything, love and light, and everything's good and all of that sort of thing. And then we just skirt right over the real issues.
Right.
And that is what I mean by, sometimes being overly in your spiritual, awareness, it can then become an escape tool, or like a deferring, or I'm not finding the right word at the moment, but just you're no longer using it for the hard part, right? You're using it to make things continuously easy, right?
Right. And they are both important. I do agree, and I understand a little more what you're saying, because they are independent of one another.
Exactly. They're independent, but they work together.
Right. Yeah. And because, like I said, for me, when I would understand something about maybe a part of my personality that is something I was taught, an old belief or whatever, and then I would be able to course correct, and then I would see spiritually I would go up as well, because now I'm becoming more, again, I think you become better and better at being the observer.
Yeah, exactly. Being aware. It's just being aware, being conscious. And, the thing that I think sets us back a lot is oftentimes when we're not, the lack of awareness makes us live out our patterning, right? It makes us live out the wounds and the issues that we have had from our parents, from our lived experience, from our societal influences, all these sorts of things. And so the point of being aware and being conscious, and even like spiritual teaching, right? Because our fears and our anxieties and things like that we have to go through are stemming from somewhere, right? And oftentimes spiritual philosophies, spiritual ideas are going to actually uplift us so that we can separate ourselves from the story in which we're living. So essentially giving us more awareness, right?
Exactly, yes.
And so that's ultimately what it is. It's like, how am I using the light of my awareness to understand what's happening for me?
So with this topic and the elephant that's in the room of what's happening in our world, now that's a different thing, because we're collective, we're all a part of the one, and we're being affected by what's happening. But we also still have our own individual parts when it comes to how we're dealing with this. How would you answer to that?
Well, I think one of the things, and I think this is the big one, is like being aware, right? This seems to keep being the word we're using, is like this awareness of what we're doing unconsciously. And that is what I think is happening in this moment in time, with what we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of these things that are happening. It's a group of people who are saying to the rest of the world, hey, we aren't being considered. Our voices are being put down. And as Martin Luther King said, riot is the language of the unheard. And I feel that is really what's happening right now. This is a time where, this is a different time, it feels like, in some way, because it almost feels like people, this last, thing hit people differently, right? Because I think we all kind of got used to that complacency with all of it, and like it was the fact that it was just so blatantly clear that like this should not have happened, this should never have happened. And then I think it's highlighting in a different way for people that the things that these people have been trying to say, and this continuous nature, it's finally something clicked for them, right? Like it actually clicked for them finally. And so anyway, what we're talking about with regards to, as it relates to awareness, is we aren't aware of the biases and the ways in which we have gone through society based on the society that we're in, right? Like, so when you're inside the society, because we grew up with it, because we have been indoctrinated, for lack of a better word, with the way in which we understand life, right? And how it works, it's a societal thing. And so we aren't aware of the implicit biases that we carry within us, right? And so by making us aware, which is what I think the Black Lives Matters movement is doing, is saying, look, these things are happening. We need to be aware, because right now we are just living out these patterns that were set out by forefathers, by the way that the United States was structured, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So for me, I feel very much it's asking us to become aware and not to go dormant and silent, right? It's saying, okay, now is a perfect time to act, and we can't go back to the comfort part, because how many of us are feeling uncomfortable on some level with whether that, any aspect of what's happening right now, we're feeling uncomfortable. But that discomfort is important, because it's through the discomfort that we actually learn, we grow, we change. Because if you're always comfortable, you're not going to change, right? Exactly. You're not going to adapt. And so right now it is part of that. So that just from on a psychological level. On a spiritual level, though, I think that there's a danger here, because what I was talking about before was about spiritual bypassing, right? And how and what I have unfortunately noticed is so many in the spiritual community kind of falling back on, well, we're all one, and I don't see race, and I don't and like it's all universal goodness. And what I've been saying to these people, like when I've had phone conversations and things with them, is like, look, I'm so happy that for you, that's how you see the world. I love that. But what this movement is trying to say to us is the rest of the world is not doing that. Right? The rest of the world is not on that same page. And so we need to help that, right? We need to help to educate. We need to help to educate ourselves and look within ourselves, like, where am I being complacent, allowing this sort of thing to happen? Because, so yeah, with the spiritual, like that sort of wanting things to just go back to peaceful, loving thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I strongly believe that, love is the key, right? But sometimes, like, think about when you love a child and they're going to go burn their hand. You have to pull away. You have to react. You have to act to protect them. And this is a part of our society and a part of our world that is saying, look, for I don't know how long, a very long time, since slavery was a thing, which has been almost always, unfortunately, our Black brothers and sisters have been kept in a certain spot.
Exactly.
Right. And so I think it's time for us to use our compassion in that direction, right? Our understanding and love and teaching, and to embrace. What we need to do is spread not just our own compassion within our own little world to where we're comfortable, but also put it out there as well. Do actions that support it. So sorry, yeah, go for it.
No, I'm very passionate about what you're saying, because I did a faux pas this week, and I'll say what that was in a minute. But the being one means that we're all collectively together, does not mean that it's all collectively to us. It means that we're all collective together as one. So when one hurts, the other hurts too. So that's not like saying, I'm one and I'm just in love and therefore everything is good.
Exactly.
When there's people that are suffering. And that's the thing. I was talking to somebody today about, so I woke up this morning because I was really bothered about what our president did. I'm thinking, let's all go to the White House and appeal everybody, every single person that could get on a plane, drive, whatever, go to the White House and just stand there.
Yeah.
Every single person would be an amazing thing. But what I did the other day, which I didn't do on purpose because I didn't think about it. And thankfully, my daughter was kind enough to show me the absurdity of what I did, because it came from my heart, right? It came from that place of, because I don't have a prejudiced bone. I never have.
Yeah.
I know that we do in some ways, but overall, I don't really have that. So to me, it was just like, why can't we all just accept each other?
Yeah.
So, because we're all people, and we know the people that are good. We know the people that are bad. I mean, we're not blind to that. It's not about who somebody is. It's about, so my point though, is I put all lives matter. And now I see how that was wrong, because it's not being sensitive to the fact that these are really, really important times to make equality happen in our world.
Well,
and that's the important thing.
Absolutely. And with the all lives matter is I love that you're bringing that up, because this is something I often say to people is like, and it's out there on the internet. People have made this point many times, but I think it's a very important point to make. And it's the idea that all lives matter. We all know, yes, they all lives matter, but no one is saying that only Black lives matter. They're just saying Black lives matter, right? And the thing is right now, the reality is all lives don't matter, because Black lives haven't mattered. They haven't mattered the same level as non-people of color, right? And even like, here's the thing, like, I'm a person of color, and I've experienced discrimination, and I've experienced, and also being a gay person as well, like the same, I've experienced these things. However, I know, and I can totally see, I've never lived the experience of what Black people have to live with.
Exactly.
And I think that's the humility that people have to have. Yes, you can start to try to understand, but you'll never truly know. You'll never truly know what that lived experience is like. And that's why right now I think is the time of listening for the rest of us. It's listening so that we can learn from them who have been studying this, who have been fighting for this, who have been doing what they can, because their voices have been so squashed, for so long. And for me, I feel like now is the time to listen and act and educate, because I thankfully, I have a higher educational degree, and in that degree, I was required to, take, classes on discrimination and people of color and Black lives and all that sort of thing, which is interesting enough around the time Black Lives Matter actually started. But I've read a bunch of books, I've learned a lot of things, but even still, that was not enough for me to truly take the responsibility that I feel we all need to be taking now. So despite I've had a great amount of knowledge trying to understand the circumstances that led us here, the experiences of all of this, it's not enough if I'm not taking action in small and big ways. No one's saying you have to be out there like picketing with everyone else, but find a way that you can do something, right? Even if it's just educating yourself and like opening your mind to the possibility that maybe there's more for you to learn. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the other thing too that's becoming really, really clear, because if you go back over the voting history, a lot of people don't vote. And so one of the things, I was listening to a gentleman talk about what we need to do, and that would be looking at the DAs, that would be looking at the police chiefs, that would be looking at how their hiring goes on in the police force. All of these things can change by one simple thing, and that's knowing who you vote for. And I don't know about you, but for me, when you look at that voting ballot and you have like 25 people, it's like for police chief and all these things, and you're like, I don't know these people. I don't know. You don't have the time to figure it out. So even if you are voting, you're voting for somebody who just, you like their name.
Exactly. And you know what? That is part of the problem. And this is what I think the biggest thing for me is, and what I've kind of been saying to people is like, we can't get lazy again.
No, we can't.
We can't let, just because our feelings, calm down and things calm down, that we then go back to where we were. And like, this is a conscious thing. This is a conscious effort. This is a choice that we make every day to act, to do something, to learn. And that's going to include taking responsibility of our government, because clearly we see what happens when we don't pay attention, right? I mean, I don't love being political, especially when there's spirituality involved, but like, sometimes you have to step up. And that also brings me to like one other thing that I was going to talk about, which is I'm not necessarily a spiritualist, but I do appreciate and love the history of spiritualism, and I do incorporate sort of in my understanding of life, and I do love the teachings of spiritualism. But spiritualism was highly connected to the women's rights movement, as well as the abolitionist movement. So getting rid of slavery as well. And, spiritual and the spirit world always came forward saying that freedom was the thing, that each person needed to be free. Each person had to be treated with dignity, respect, all of these things. And it was all within the history of spiritualism. They were very tightly connected with this movement to end slavery. And I feel like that touches me in a different way too, because it's like, that's what the spirit world wants. The spirit world wants us to lift up those who suffer. The spirit world wants us to have people be equal. And we can't just be comfortable in our, little comfortable spiritual world because it's nice and it feels good. Like, we have to be able to go to where the suffering is, right? Go to where the pain is. And that's where the true value comes from our spiritual practice and from our spiritual understanding, is like, how do I dive in to relieve the suffering in others? And I think that's where the spiritual side of things come.
Well, I love that you're saying it, because it brings back to the wholeness, the one, right? Again, I think that as whatever you want to call the world that we're in can tend to be in that, not really facing reality. And we're into woo-woo, la land, that everything is peaceful. But that's not our journey here. Our journey here is to have these experiences as human beings, because we are not a human being. We are a soul, as we talked about in the beginning. So I think it's another part of, I'm hoping, the awakening of what's happening is for people to realize that it's not about we're just one and you could just think this and this is going to happen. There's more. There is an amount of work, like you said, it's that being in the uncomfortable and doing the work for the what is going to be right. That's what we need to be taking more seriously, I think, and where we move forward.
Absolutely. One of my friends asked me, because we got into kind of I don't want to say debate, because we weren't really debating. It was more just exploring a topic. And he asked me, okay, so what do you say then to, those people who follow Eastern philosophy and believe that, I'm going to not identify with my ego or myself, and that, ultimately, it's about letting go of the trappings of the human reality. And I say, and I was like, I do know the answer of what I'm going to say to those people. The answer would be, those are two different things. Your own spiritual experience is one thing, but living in the mundane world, yes, those practices will get you to that place, but the rest of the world isn't doing that. The rest of the world isn't in that space. And we can actually do active, demonstrative things out there to help those people, right? And so I separate these two again. And, that's sort of thing. I have a tendency, Saturn is my chart ruler, I have a tendency to kind of, put things in these little boxes of like, okay, well, yes, here's the spirituality, and it does run through all of the things, but we also have to separate it from the lived experience that people are having, right? Like, I can sit here and say, I'm going to meditate and send out love and do all those things, and I think that's important, but then we have to throw an and I'm going to do this in the physicality, and I'm going to donate to charities, and I'm going to help, the suffering person down the street. It's not enough to just do it within yourself. Yes, it helps, because our change and our transformation begins within, but also it's our job then, if we are these bigger picture people, it's our job then to help other people move from a place where suffering is, so that they can grow to that understanding. I don't know if you're familiar at all with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So he's a psychologist, and he basically, it's a little pyramid. And at the bottom, it's basically essentially all the things you need before you reach self-actualization. And the idea is essentially, the base is like, food, sex, basal, very, very just like survival sort of things. And if you have someone, like, let's say you want people to all become spiritual and have this understanding, what we need to do then is to help people out of these lower levels, these lower needs that just everyone has, so that help them so they have the opportunity to move into this higher spiritual awareness. Because being able to sit back and not act right now is a privilege. That is a privilege, because we're not fighting for our lives. We're not feeling like we have to act. That is because we have been privileged enough to suffer these things. And so I think that's something that's really important for people to try to take a step back and go, yes, all of these spiritual ideas are great, but like, that is a privilege for me to not feel the need, right? And this is why I keep saying to people, let's make this thing personal to us. The more you understand, the more you relate to it, it becomes a personal thing. Let's do that so that we fight for it.
So it's interesting, because we started in the beginning of this conversation about, the spiritual growth and our inner work and our outer work and all of that. And we're coming to the bigger picture where we all know that we are all one. but we're all, it's kind of like, okay, I'm the Eisen family and I have all my little, peoples around me in my Eisen family, but they're not all me. They're all my Eisen family, right? And they're all going to do their own things or whatever.
Right.
How do we help people, especially because the inner work is important, like the meditation, going within, sometimes in my meditation in the morning, I do just spend a lot of time pouring out love into the universe, because the vibration of that is going to change what's happening to some degree. How do we help people balance all of that out? And because I can hear people in their minds like having this war between the I shoulds and I shouldn'ts, and some people said the familiars and the unfamiliars and all these other things.
Yeah. What I would kind of bring us to, and what kind of just came into my awareness, was essentially the idea of, we talk a lot about in like the spiritual development world, like the balance of the mind, body, and spirit. And I think that that's something important to then also apply in a very tangible way. So we can do the part where we're sending out that love. We can do the part where we're, trying to change the vibration. And that is the spiritual, right?
Right.
But then we also have to do the part where we're doing something with our mind. And that is education, that is learning, that is understanding, that is growing, that is finding our own sort of blocks and things like that. And then we need to do something with the physical, which is demonstrative action to create change, something that we're doing out there in the world. So I think remembering balance, because I don't think we're here in this physical life just to go through it and like just totally be in the spiritual realm. Maybe for some people that is what they're meant to do. The gurus or like the mystics and things like that. That's a part of their job to teach us and that sort of thing. But ultimately, let's be real. You're here on the physical earth. Do you want to do something and make it better? I think we all do, especially those who come from a place of love. We want to, but what happens is we get lazy, we get complacent, we get indifferent, because we're so inundated with all of these things. And then we lose, unless we're feeling that, oh, I'm outraged, then we lose that fire to continuously do that. Does that make sense? So just bringing in the physical, it's like keep doing the spiritual side, but now bring in the mental and the physical side too.
And I agree, it is total balance, because we have to be the complete, because that's how we evolve, is being all of those things, not just one. And it's easy to be one, right? Whatever it is that's more dominant for you. But what would you say to people? Like, I've seen this a lot, especially on social media. I'm so angry about this and I want to make a change, but I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start.
Absolutely. Well, I know that there's a lot of resources that are being passed around right now. But what I would always recommend, I know there's a few books that people have been putting up. I think if you don't know what to do, then you have to start with learning, right? Learning, or if you're not sure that you can do something else, donate to a charity, do something, literally anything, honestly, other than just doing nothing, right? Learn about it. That's the easiest thing we can do. There's that documentary on Netflix. Everyone has Netflix. You have an hour or whatever, 2 hours. 13. It's called 13, and that is all about this topic. That is all about incarceration and Black lives and things. Do something. It's just don't be inactive. That's essentially what it is. And I think looking to leaders, so searching out, and here's the other thing, and this is the biggest thing that I find. So right now, especially, those people of color that are in your life and that you love are going through a trauma. They are going, and we all are going through the trauma, but especially them. And I think that it's important to remember that it's not their job to educate us and teach us.
Exactly.
It's our responsibility to search. We all have Google. We all have, we can look up. I mean, these things have been out there and put out there, and all we have to do is just do a quick Google search. What are the best books on this topic, right? Or, what movie or documentary can I read? What research articles show this thing? And you're going to be able to find all of it. But it takes that little bit of just kind of extra effort that I think a lot of people, what we have in our modern day and age is this thing where we love the sound bites. We love the sound bites. We love it when it's already tailored and we can just read the main points and like, yep, that goes with what I believe. I'm just going to, okay, that sticks with that. But this isn't that. This isn't that. If we want true systemic change, it has to change within our own, belief system, our own understanding. And a nice little organized thing is not enough. So we have to make the effort. And one of my really, really close friends, one of my best friends actually, is a Black person, and he's going through it. This is a lot for him right now. A lot of stress and anxiety, and feeling caught between these two worlds that are saying this isn't your reality and this is your reality, right? And it's very, very hard, for him right now. And I can't look to him for the answers, right? Because he's dealing with his own thing. He's dealing with his own stress, his own anxiety. I have to take it upon myself to go find the answers. Do you know what I mean?
Which I think you need to anyway, because we all resonate at different vibrations, right? And so what's going to affect me is going to be different than what affects you by so many things in our history, our past.
Absolutely.
And so you're going to have a different take than I would on how to help, because when you educate, I think the two things: educate yourself and listen. Like I heard I respect this person. I've had him on my show. He does a lot of readings on YouTube, and he finally expressed, he's a Black man, and he finally expressed the hurt that he's feeling through this. And the fact that, one of his comments today, which I've heard, one of his comments today really tore my heart out, because it's something that is true for them, is they can't take off their skin. They can't take off that cloak. They can't walk away from what they experience every day. And he explained how he has to deal with that every day when he goes into a store, when he walks down the street, whatever. So it's having that compassion to just listen to them and being able to, because I know as spiritual people, we can tend to say, well, you just have to put out the words of positive, whatever, we all do that. And
bypassing. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing there.
Yeah. So it's being able to listen to them, being able to absorb and help them to process what they have to process, not by judgment, not by making them better, not by telling them what to do or how they can change anything, but just listen and educate yourself. And I love that you said the little sound bites, because we have become very lazy to have these like 5-minute, little things that we could just, and then we think we're an expert at it.
Exactly. We're an expert, and that we have the answers, and we know our stance on this. So now we don't have to think about it anymore. And again, I want everyone who's listening to realize that little sense of like, okay, I just want to know this really quick,
right,
is laziness. Like ultimately that is laziness. And I don't want to, discourage anyone, but ultimately, like, just let's call it what it is and let's do better. Like, let's do better. We have to make that choice ourselves. It has to become important to us. And, I never really understood, what people of color, especially Black people, go through. I mean, only my own, right? But go through until, I became, one of my best friends is a Black person, and he, and seeing the things that he goes through on a day-to-day basis, never had any idea. Never experienced anything like it. I mean, literally, we've been pulled over. Like the one time we would drive in my car, and I lived in Irvine, and the one time we're driving together in the car, we get pulled over, no reason, literally no reason at all. They just came, just said, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" Da 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 da. And like I drove that car every day in the same area. I've never been pulled over. And like the one time I'm driving with him, that's what happens. He's had people yell things at him as he's riding his bike, the N-word and things like that. He has had, and these are just the things I've seen. He has had, what's it called? Been pulled over by police for just riding a bike. And like, this is what they talk about, driving while Black, walking while Black. Do you know what I mean? Like they talk about these experiences, and like, finally, I feel like it's gotten to a point where we're being loud now, and it's fine. Like, okay, look, this is what's happening. And so we have to support them in any way that we can, but we can't dictate what that way is. We let them tell us. And I think that's kind of what you were saying, JoAnne.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Because I think that a part of the thing that in human nature is we have to make things better, or we know better, or we just have these ways of thinking that we really need to stop.
I wish that, I think the best thing that we can do right now is look towards the leaders who have been looking at this for years and years and years and years, right? Let's look to the organizations, like the NAACP. Let's look at, the research, all we have to do, I mean, because in like my sociological classes and criminal law classes and things like that, we learned all about these like biases that impact people of color far more than others. And with the prison systems and incarceration, redlining, all of these different aspects in which, not being able to get bank loans. And like one of the things that I saw recently was from Martin Luther King is like when the slaves were released, they were not given any land. They were not given anything to get themselves ahead. They were just so, okay, you're free now figure it out. Whereas they were giving all of this land to the West to, Europeans, right? That were coming over, from Europe. So we have to really go back and say, what are some of these beliefs that I have around, Black people that I need to address, that I need to realize? And, it's just challenging. Like as you start to go down it, you start to realize, wow, I've held a thought like that. I've held an unconscious belief about this. And it's hard, and you have to face yourself, and you have to take responsibility, and it sucks, but like it's actually better for them. Like that's one of the things we have to do.
Do you think we'll ever get past this divide that we have going on?
Yeah, well, define what you mean by the divide. Like, what do you mean?
Well, the prejudice that we have in the divide, I guess I look at it as there's a lot of people that understand this and live this way of life, where people are just people, period. And then there's some like think that they are not prejudiced, but they are. I was just talking to someone like that. And yet you have the ones that are. So there's this divide of, people, sects of people. Yeah. One of the things that I'm the most depressed about with the protesting that's going on now that I've never seen in any protests that I've been alive for is one, that the calm came in pretty fast. More people are just calmly protesting now. But people actually have gone in and helped to clean up the mess of the ones that were destructive, which I've never seen that happen before, where people are like, no, we're gonna go in and we're gonna make this right. So do you think that we'll ever get through this divide of the way that we all see life?
The optimist in me likes to believe yes. But the only way, my fear is that people get complacent and that they lose the passion for this topic yet again, right? And so for me, I hope so. And I think the only way we can do it is through action and through not giving up on this topic. And just when the riots died down and all these things aren't attention, not just going, okay, now I can go back to my regularly scheduled life.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like we have to continuously, and then vote, people. Like,
yes,
vote. Please. I know that especially a lot of the spiritual people, I love you, my spiritual people. You my people. I love you. But we can tend to be fed up with the harsh realities of life.
Right.
And we can't do that. We can't just get lazy or, oh, that doesn't fit with my high vibe, no low vibe thing going on. And like, no. To raise the consciousness, it's not just raising your own. It's raising everyone. And we have to do it in big and small ways, in demonstrative ways, and in personal ways. And I think one of the easiest things is voting. One of the easiest things. Yes. Is it always perfect? No.
Yeah. And it won't.
Look at the bigger picture. Look at what we're trying to get to. There is no clear-cut good side over bad side. If you're looking for that, you're going to be disappointed.
Right.
But what we have to do is, what side is moving us closer and what side is moving us away? And right now, I think that's a very clear, very clear divide.
If it's not very clear right now, I don't know what would make it more clear. I think we should all get on airplanes and buses and boats and trains and whatever and go to Washington and all of us stand there at the White House.
I mean, we literally could. I mean, to be honest, we literally could. There's actually no reason why we can't. I mean, obviously, some people have to work and do all that sort of things. And like, it's tempting. It's incredibly tempting.
But what is the greater good for the all?
Yeah.
I mean, really seriously, we have to, and I know that we all can't do that. I'm very serious and not, but I'm actually very serious. But with that being said, it's about really paying attention. It's like so many people, like we said earlier about not really knowing who they're voting for. Well, whatever side of the fence you're on, pay attention and do your homework. Don't, like the small bits. Don't let the small bits just come in. Really understand what it is that you're voting for. And I don't think that any of us have ever done that truly to the extent that we should. That is a right for us to do for our democracy.
Absolutely.
And for our country. And look where we're at in our country right now.
Exactly. And you know, you asked, what do we do for the greater good? And what I believe it's Jesus that says, what you do to the least of us, you do to me, right? And so if we think of that in those terms, as like, if we can't help the lowest, then we're all suffering, we're all in pain, we're all losing in that thing, because that's just how that is. But the other thing I want to offer to anyone who's listening is, I know that this is a very painful time. I know that this is a very reactive time, and a lot of emotions are very, very high. But what we should try to learn to do is to not just shut the door on everyone who disagrees with us.
Yes.
And really try, and yes, you're not going to convince everyone, no way, but try to listen to what both sides are saying. And I'm not saying that I'm validating one side over the other. Well, actually, I am validating one side over the other. I am validating the side that I think Black people, are being treated horrible and all of that sort of thing. But what I am saying is that what I have found when I have tried to put aside my emotional reaction, because of course I'm like everyone else. As soon as someone starts saying things that I just think is the most ridiculous thing, my passion comes out, and I'm like, okay, here's why you're effing wrong, and you know what I mean. And that whole thing comes out. But I have realized more recently, if I can just take that reactive side out and try to just put that aside and just listen and make sure that other person feels heard. And also, this doesn't necessarily count on like the internet, because people have no emotional connection whatsoever. But if you're having like an actual conversation, try to listen to what the actual issue is. Because every time that I've had this conversation with someone and we've gotten to the point where we got past each other's walls, they would tell me, and this is usually white people, they would tell me, I'm afraid. Like, now I feel like I'm in danger, or now I feel like something is, this is creating more of a divide between the races, and now I feel unsafe. And I'm like, great, perfect. I'm so glad that you're saying that, because one, it helps me understand what the underlying thing is here. But then secondly, I highlight for them that discomfort you're feeling right now. That is exactly what people of color face every day, especially Black people. They have to be afraid of how the world is going to be reacting to them or impacting them. And it's subconscious. I don't know how conscious it is for them. I'm sure it is. I don't know. I can't speak for them. But that is part of their reality, is that discomfort, that unsafe. Like, are the cops going to help me, or are they going to hurt me? Right? Is this person going to think just because I'm walking down the street that because I'm a large Black man that I'm a danger, or I'm doing something suspicious? Right? And these are these little things that are big and little things that they have to deal with. And so that discomfort is important for you to feel.
Yes.
You need to feel that discomfort, because then it's going to help you to understand and relate. And like I said, making it personal. When you can understand and you can relate, that's what's going to create change within you. It's going to make you care about the topic and care about, this issue and want to make change.
And I think it goes back to the two keys that you said earlier. It's listening and educating yourself, because the more you educate yourself, the more you're not going to be responsive to people who are not really threatening, because you're going to understand.
Yeah.
Also, though, the one big thing that I tell people is to pay attention to your gut, because your gut will usually tell you when you're in danger and when you're not.
Yeah.
Your fear is something that's in your head. Your fear is something that you conjure up that's not real.
Yeah.
But your gut, it's telling you, oh, maybe you shouldn't go down that way, or maybe you should go this way. That's going to direct you in safety. That's much different than saying, oh, because you look a certain way, I'm not going to go there.
Well, and the concern is, I love that too. The concern is, though, that people can't differentiate, right? Some people can't do that, right? And because some people aren't aware, remember that we can talk about that because of our experiences with becoming sensitive, and we've really learned to differentiate and feel different things. But the average person doesn't, right? And so
You really think that the average person really is? I mean, I understand what you're saying, that average people are disconnected from their gut. I do understand what you're saying, but when people are in a really stressful time, like something really dangerous or whatever is going to happen, like they pull a car off of somebody, or they do, you know what I mean? They're doing it from their gut. They're not doing it from their head. So people are connected to it.
Exactly. Well, and I think more of what I, to clarify then,
Yeah.
more of what I'm referring to is like people are going to have a reaction to things based on their belief systems.
Yeah.
And if it's a strong enough reaction, they're going to think, oh, I better listen to that, right? Like that dropping feeling or that something inside of them.
Right.
What I think, you know, you're describing is sort of, I don't even know the right word. It's almost, it is listening to your gut. It is doing that. But I feel like there's another aspect to it, because like if we're just going off of the visceral response, some people are unaware that their visceral response comes through a lens of
right.
And so that's kind of what I'm highlighting there with that.
Yes, I get what you're saying there. Because and a lot, like for me, when I was going through my journey, I didn't realize how much of my past was dictating my life until, as you said, we're aware of what we're doing. You become the observer of your life. You're like, wow, I'm reacting that way because I was taught this. So it does take work to be able to kind of like take those lenses away, right? But there's that difference, that instinctive gut feeling where you're like, yeah, no, this is not a good idea. But we don't listen to that. But we were taught not to listen to it too. So here we go back around to the
exactly. I think that's beautiful how we started the conversation, because I think that's one of the biggest keys here is like, and this is why I differentiate between your spiritual unfoldment and your psychological, because everything that, once to go back to the spiritual kind of conversation, everything that we experience when we're developing our mediumship, our psychic awareness, our spiritual sense, everything has to pass through a filter of our mind. And so when the more that we clear out, this is kind of what you're saying, JoAnne, the more that we clear out that filter, and we better understand what are these things, then it passes through much clearer, right? With what is happening versus what our brain is interpreting or perceiving.
And I do agree that it's still even hard for spiritual people to, at points, differentiate between the two as well. So it is a difficult.
It's a journey. It's a journey, and it takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes that dedication to it, you know, to yourself and all of that.
I agree. But it's important to start. And I do agree with a lot of what we've said in here. It's taking those first steps forward and allowing it to unfold, because that's the first step of being able to heal of all of this that we've been going through, is being able to look at that and being able to start that process to being able to connect back to who you really are, back to understanding what you're really here for, instead of working just from that ego or that knee-jerk reaction.
Absolutely.
That's so important.
Absolutely. And you know, as you were saying that, you know, I was, you know, something popped into my mind, and it's like, I think, you know, the most effective way that we can support is to listen and then build bridges, because I don't think it's the responsibility necessarily of only the people of color that are going through a lot right now to have to carry all of it and be like the ones that are fighting with their voice. And I think it's our responsibility as allies and supports to these people, that we build the bridges and we do the work and we inform and we do what we can. And I understand so many of us are so tired of this topic and like exhausted from having to explain over and over. Each time you have someone new and you have to like break it down for them and try to give them all of these facts and information and just things. Oh my goodness. It's like, and like one of the, so anyway, I feel like building bridges, that's what we need to do, is with those people who are on the other side. Let's build bridges to educate. But if we just go, which I think there is a place for this, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you know, even in some Buddhist, you know, practices, traditions, it's like when you have to protect oneself, you have to act, right? But yeah, so I think, you know, our biggest job is to, if you're an ally, to build the bridges, educate yourself, and try to educate others. Because the more that you know, the easier this is going to help and teach. And then also listening to you know, what's really going on.
It really is important. I was thinking as you were saying that, we've had people here, and usually we have, and thank you for Sharon and all you guys who have asked or made your comments there. And yes, Sharon Lee, Michael is amazing and his passion is great. But it's getting involved, like ask the questions and, ask people questions and read about things and educate yourself, talk about it. And we really have to keep this dialogue alive and not let it die.
Well, sorry, go for it. Sorry.
Go ahead. We need to not let it die. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is what I think would be great is that when you go to post this, if we put together some kind of resource for people of either how they can donate, how they can act, things that they can watch, things that they can read, we can like put that also in there. That way people have something, like they're watching this, like, okay, I want to act, I want to do something, and like we can put something in there. So I don't know if you would be open to doing that.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? That's what this is all about. It's helping people to get through this and educate people. And we have people on all sides of this, right? We have people that are like you've experienced your own prejudice. We've had, all of us are dealing with it. Women are dealing with prejudice in their own way, but it does not measure up to what the Black community is dealing with. And that's what I think our biggest topic is right now in this conversation, is having the compassion for them and having the compassion for the healing that needs to take place in our world and be able to accept each other, which is so important.
Absolutely. And I think we have an opportunity then, as from the place of prejudice that we have all experienced.
Right.
Use that as a way to relate and understand.
Yes.
Right. And to as best you can. From well, obviously we'll never totally understand, but at least we can understand to a point. And then again, that makes it personal. That makes it matter to us, because we don't want those people. I don't want anyone to ever feel that way. Like, I know how I felt. I mean, I've had literally eggs thrown at me for being gay. I've had people say horrible things to me, different, things. And like, I never liked that. And I don't want other people to experience it. And they're experiencing way more. They're experiencing like literally being murdered. They're literally being murdered. And
without even a blink of an eye. Without even
exactly. Because there is this belief somewhere. I believe it began. It was definitely a while back, but I know that there was a movie at the turn of a century, something America. I can't remember the name, and I'm kicking myself for not knowing that right now. But it really put forward a lot of these ideas that these racist ideas of like, Black men are dangerous. They are lazy. They just want to rape the women. They want, there's all these different ideas that the dangerous thing is a thing that has stuck for so long, and that they need to be controlled. And that comes out of slavery. And this is why now we see this mass incarceration and all this sort of thing. And so it's like, we need to go into all of that and understand those, those biases, right?
Mm-hmm. So I have a question for you. That's gonna, I don't know, hope it won't take you off.
Okay. That's okay. It's all good.
What does the spiritual world have to say about what's going on in our world today?
Yeah. So I have not asked. I have yet to ask. I am going to start sitting for trance again, and I'd like to believe that is something. But just from people who have spoken in the past, from what we've seen in the past of the spirit world, like I said before, in spiritualism in general. The trance communicators, the spirits coming through the mediums, all talked about equality, justice, helping people, breaking them free from all of that. And I can only imagine. I mean, obviously, I don't know, because I'm not going to speak for the other world. But when it does come through, what they always talk about is the core of it all is love, right? And if the core of it is love, we are not being loving to this group of people.
Right.
As a society, as a society, we're not loving them as much as we're loving others, right?
And I do want to put in here, because I don't want it to get lost. If somebody's coming in, it's not that same love where we're all just walking around with flowers and whatever, rainbows. Yeah. It's having real love, and some love comes in many different ways. So I just want to point that out again, even though we said it earlier, that it's important to understand what love really is.
Yeah. It's having compassion for the pain and the plight of someone else.
Right.
And this is what they're saying. They're saying we are in pain, we are suffering, we are being killed.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you really hear that, like really listen to what they're saying, they're being killed. And like that hits you, right? Like that hits you, that gives you this feeling of like, oh my God, if you watch that, I mean, how many of us felt when they were watching that video, you know, just wishing that like someone would have just
Yes.
or did something. And I'm not blaming those people because obviously they didn't know what was about to happen, but like I'm not blaming anyone, of course, but other than the police officers, of course, but I'm not blaming anyone for not acting, but I know that we've all felt that. And now this is that moment. We were the observers to that murder. We were the observers to that murder.
Mm-hmm.
And now, and we have been, and this is the part that I think is super important to note, we have been the observers to all the other ones as well.
Yes. Yes.
And only now are we going, okay, enough is enough. And I think, you know, I'm glad it's happening now. I'm glad, and I think that's important, but we need to stop being the observer and we need to act. It's time to act. It's time to jump in. If you wanted to do something when you saw, you know, him in that position, this is the time to do that. You couldn't save him, but we can save those in the future.
Right. And that's the important thing, because, you know, and for the people, and I understand what you were saying about we all felt that way because we did. And still understanding with the compassion that the people around there were fearful as well.
Of course.
Because these were definitely crooked,
Absolutely.
horrible cops.
Oh, absolutely. And in no way am I saying that like they should have done something.
I totally agree.
You know, they did do something. They let us all know what was happening.
Exactly.
And that's the, you know, we have to be grateful that at least that was done. But, you know, yeah. So if you had that feeling of like, I wish someone would have done something. Well, now it's you. You're going to do something. I'm going to do something. We're all going to do something to make sure this doesn't keep happening.
Right. And I do see it changing. I feel like this was like the breaking point of people just saying enough is enough is enough. We have got to band together, and this has got to change, because this isn't, it's like you said earlier, we've become complacent to it, even though we know it's going on. Yeah. And we know people that have been affected by it.
Yeah.
But now it's like people are saying, no, we can't deal with this anymore. We cannot allow this to keep happening, because we are all human beings here, and we all have a right to be here and live in peace.
Yeah. And you know, it's just hard because we're going to have to undo a lot of structural change. And you know, that's why I don't want people to get exhausted. You know, we're going to, like, it's very likely that we will feel fatigue from all of this, but like, we can't give up, and we got to keep going, and we got to keep trying and do what we can, and vote, please, for the love of all things holy, please vote, please.
I cannot say that enough. Please vote. We cannot let this election go. And however you have to vote, no matter what it takes to get out there and vote, you've got to vote. We cannot let this. And don't be, one of the things that I like to add to the voting piece, because it's very, very important, don't allow others to think for you. Mm-hmm. You do your homework and know what you're voting for, because that's what happened. We became complacent and we became lazy, and we let whatever influences decide for us what to think. That's not our thinking, and we have to think for ourselves and what's right or wrong for ourselves. Whatever side of the fence you're on. I mean, It's like, just vote, but do it because you're educated, not because you're listening to social media, because you're listening to sound bites, because you're listening to rhetoric that's coming from whatever news station or whoever it is.
And we're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of that. Absolutely. And so it's just taking responsibility for you. A truly spiritual person cares about the things of this world.
Right.
That's what I feel, because we are a part of this world. You know, we are of it, we are part of it, and we're also a part of that which is greater than ourselves. Right. And a truly spiritual person wants to help everyone be uplifted.
Well, you know, it made me really think of something, because I think as spiritual people, we think, well, we're here for a human experience. It's all about me having this human experience, without realizing that my human experience is affecting the people around me, and I'm responsible for that.
Yeah.
we're responsible for our actions and how it's affecting everybody else. So it's not okay to say, well, I'm here and I'm doing my thing. Like you said, I'm meditating and I'm doing my inner work and I'm doing mediumship or I'm doing
and that's a part of it, right? Like,
it is a part of it. And it's part of it. But you're also here
but
to
also, exactly. It's an and. It's not an or, and it's that part's not enough. It's
right.
an and. It's an and. And I think that's really,
we're responsible for what's happening in this world. We are responsible for it.
exactly. We're seeing what we're seeing right now because of our lack of action before.
Exactly.
That's what we're seeing.
100%. And I hope everybody will hear that.
It's not, I mean, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to feel like we had a hand in it, but we did. And I take full responsibility for my lack of action.
I agree with you. Because I would stay in my own little world, running my own little business, doing my own little things, trying to grow, trying to be better. But what was I really doing? What was I really changing in the world?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I have a friend of mine who's like, because, you know, I'm wanting to build community. I'm wanting to build all these things. She's like, can we do this already? Because I want to like make change. I want to like act. And I'm like, yes, we're going to do this and like figure out how we can best do that. And I think, again, you know, just to leave everyone with this is like, you know, just be sure to look to the leaders if you're not sure, right? Look to the people who have been fighting this fight for so long. What can we do? And listen to what they're saying. Even if you don't necessarily agree, discover why they're saying that. Why are they suggesting this? Why it might feel dramatic to us, but it's not to them, obviously, right? So listen to the leaders of that community.
And I think that's a perfect way to end. It really is an important message. One of the things I want to add here, though, is Michael Mayo is a very amazing spiritual teacher. He does trans mediumship, which I love doing, mediumship, psychic development circles. You're very active in the spiritual world. So look up Michael Mayo. He does things online right now, which is amazing because you usually do things in person. But you have the opportunity right now to do things online. So look them up. And I would love to have you back because this wasn't originally when I asked you to be on my show, wasn't the direction we're going to go because you have so many talents that you can share with people. So I'd love to have you back and we'll talk more of the spiritual side of things when it comes to the balance of all the spiritual aspects of living.
Absolutely. Yep. And I would love to be back. I really appreciate you having this conversation with me. I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. So thank you, everybody. If you have questions, I'll connect with Michael about whatever sources he has, and we'll put sources in here because I agree that would be very beneficial right now, especially because I've had so many people say, what do I do? Where do I start? Where do I go? Go to Washington, for one, and stand there, look president in the face. Anyway, I will put them there, and everybody have a safe and as best as you can night. And thank you for sharing this time with us. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you.